What if I told you that the reason you're not where you want to be has nothing to do with your talent, your background, or your circumstances, but everything to do with what you choose to do in the next 24 hours? Stay with me, because this might challenge everything you believe about success. Most people think their life will change in a big moment, a breakthrough, a sudden opportunity, a perfect plan. But what if that moment never comes? What if the life you keep waiting for is actually being decided right now in the smallest choices you keep ignoring? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every day, you are either building your future or quietly destroying it. There is no neutral. There is no pause. And the difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck is not massive action. It's something so simple that most people overlook it completely. That's why you need to hear this until the very end, because once you understand it, you won't be able to go back to thinking the same way again. This is not another motivational talk filled with temporary hype. This is about a shift, a mental reset that will change how you see discipline, progress, and your own potential. If you truly apply what you're about to hear, you won't just feel motivated. You will become dangerous to your own limitations. So before you click away, ask yourself one question. Are you willing to face the truth about why you haven't grown yet? Because in the next few minutes, you're going to realize something powerful. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is smaller than you think. But only if you're ready to see it. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can become in a year. That's where the problem begins. Because when you believe change has to be dramatic, you set yourself up for inconsistency. You wait for the perfect moment, the perfect energy, the perfect plan. And when that moment doesn't arrive, you do nothing. Or worse, you try to do everything at once, overwhelm yourself, and then quit. But real growth doesn't work like that. It never has. Small daily progress is not just a strategy, it's a psychological advantage. When you reduce the size of the task, you remove resistance. The brain doesn't fight small steps. It doesn't fear them. A single improvement, a slight adjustment, one focused action, that feels manageable. And because it feels manageable, you actually do it. That's the difference. Not what sounds impressive, but what gets repeated. You see, success is not built on intensity. It's built on repetition. Think about the habits that shape your life. They're not formed in one day. They're formed through patterns. Quiet, consistent patterns that don't demand attention, but demand commitment. When you improve just 1%, you are reinforcing a pattern of forward movement. You are telling your mind, this is who I am. I move forward no matter how small the step. And that identity shift is everything. Because once you start seeing yourself as someone who makes progress daily, your standards change. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for motivation to show up. You begin to trust the process, even when the results are not visible yet. That's where most people fall apart. They need to see progress to believe in it. But growth doesn't reveal itself immediately. It accumulates beneath the surface. Every small action is like a deposit into an account you can't check daily. And because you can't see the balance increasing, you start to doubt whether it's working. But it is working. Every extra minute of focus is sharpening your discipline. Every small effort is strengthening your mental endurance. Every time you choose progress over comfort, you are building momentum. And momentum is powerful because once it starts, it becomes easier to continue than to stop. This is why small progress beats big effort. Big effort is emotional. It depends on how you feel. It's driven by bursts of inspiration, and when that inspiration fades, so does the action. Small progress, on the other hand, is rational. It's grounded. It doesn't ask how you feel. It simply asks, what's the next step? And that question changes everything. Because when you focus on the next step, you stop being overwhelmed by the entire journey. You stop thinking about how far you have to go, and you start paying attention to what you can do right now. That's where control exists, in the present, in the small decision in front of you. And those decisions compound. Not in a dramatic, overnight transformation, but in a quiet, undeniable shift. One day you realize you're thinking differently, acting differently, responding differently. The things that once felt difficult now feel normal. The discipline that once felt forced now feels natural. And people will look at you and assume you made a sudden change. They'll think you found some secret, some shortcut. But you'll understand something they don't. There was no shortcut. There was no sudden breakthrough. There was only a series of small, consistent choices that you refused to break. That's the power of the 1% rule. It removes the illusion that you need to do something extraordinary to become extraordinary. It replaces it with something far more effective. Daily, repeatable progress. So instead of asking yourself how to change your entire life, ask a better question. What is the smallest action I can take today that moves me forward? And then commit to that. Not once, not occasionally, but every single day. Because in the end, it's not the intensity of your effort that defines your future. It's the consistency of it. And if you can master that, if you can truly commit to being just a little better each day, then there is no limit to where you can go. Small steps, repeated daily, don't just change your results. They redefine who you are. Motivation is a feeling, and like every feeling, it is unreliable. It rises when things are easy, when the idea of change feels exciting, when the outcome seems close enough to touch. But the moment resistance appears, when the work becomes repetitive, when progress slows down, when results are not immediate, motivation begins to fade. And if your actions depend on how you feel in those moments, then your progress will always be inconsistent. That's the hidden weakness most people never confront. They build their goals on emotional energy instead of structured discipline. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for the moment when everything inside them aligns perfectly. But that moment is temporary, and when it disappears, so does their momentum. Discipline works differently. Discipline does not ask how you feel. It asks what needs to be done. It removes emotion from the decision-making process and replaces it with intention. You don't negotiate with discipline. You don't debate it. You follow through because you've already decided who you are. And that is the core of the 1% rule. It's not about forcing yourself into extreme action. It's about creating a standard so clear, so simple, that there is no room for excuses. A small step forward every single day, regardless of your mood. Not because you feel like it, but because it aligns with the person you are choosing to become. This is where identity begins to take shape. Every action you repeat sends a message to your mind. When you act only when motivated, you reinforce the belief that action requires emotion. But when you act regardless of motivation, you send a different message entirely. You prove to yourself that you are capable of consistency, that your behavior is not controlled by temporary feelings. And over time, that proof becomes belief. You begin to trust yourself in a deeper way. Not because you always feel strong, but because you know you will act even when you don't. That trust is powerful. It eliminates hesitation. It removes doubt. It creates a sense of stability in your behavior that most people never experience. Because most people are controlled by fluctuations. They are productive when they feel good and absent when they don't. Focused when it's convenient, distracted when it's not. They operate in cycles of intensity followed by burnout. And they mistake those cycles for effort, when in reality, they are just reacting to their emotions. Discipline breaks that cycle. It creates a baseline, a standard that does not change based on how you feel that day. And once that baseline is established, progress becomes predictable. Not dramatic, not explosive, but steady. And steady progress is what leads to lasting change. There is also something deeper happening beneath the surface. When you rely on discipline, you are training your mind to tolerate discomfort. You are teaching yourself that resistance is not a signal to stop, but a natural part of growth. Every time you follow through when it's difficult, You expand your capacity to handle challenge. You become less reactive, more controlled, more focused. And that changes how you approach everything. You stop fearing hard work. You stop avoiding discomfort. You begin to see effort not as something to escape, but as something to engage with, because you understand that on the other side of that effort is growth. This is why discipline is more powerful than motivation. Motivation can start the process, but it cannot sustain it. Discipline sustains it. Discipline carries you through the moments when motivation disappears. It ensures that your actions remain aligned with your goals, even when your emotions are not. And over time, something unexpected happens. The actions that once required effort begin to feel natural. The resistance that once slowed you down begins to weaken. What was once discipline becomes habit, and what was once difficult becomes automatic. That is when you realize you've changed. Not because you suddenly felt different, but because you consistently acted different. And those actions reshaped your identity from the inside out. So stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop giving your emotions control over your progress. Decide who you are, define your standard, and let your actions reflect that every single day. Because in the end, the question is not whether you feel ready. The question is whether you are willing to act without needing to feel ready. And the moment you can do that, you stop being controlled by your feelings and start being defined by your discipline. There is a phase in every meaningful transformation where nothing seems to be happening. You are putting in the effort. You are showing up consistently. You are following through on the small promises you made to yourself. And yet, on the surface, your life looks the same. No dramatic results, no visible breakthrough, no immediate reward. And this is the moment that defines everything. Because most people interpret that silence as failure. They assume that if the results are not visible, the effort must not be working. So they stop, they withdraw. They return to old habits, not because they lack ability, but because they lack patience. But what they fail to understand is that growth is not always visible in real time. In fact, the most important changes are happening beneath the surface in ways that cannot be measured instantly. Every time you choose consistency over comfort, you are restructuring your internal world. You are strengthening neural pathways. You are reinforcing patterns of behavior that, over time, become automatic. This is not theoretical. This is how the mind adapts. It learns through repetition, not through intensity. So while you are focused on the absence of external results, something far more significant is taking place internally. Your thinking is becoming sharper. Your reactions are becoming more controlled. Your tolerance for discomfort is expanding. You are becoming someone who can handle more, do more, and sustain more. But because these changes are gradual, they are easy to overlook. This is why consistency feels so unrewarding in the beginning. There is no immediate feedback loop. No clear signal that tells you, this is working. You are operating on trust. Trust in the process, trust in your actions, trust that what you are building will eventually reveal itself. And that kind of trust is rare. Most people need constant validation to continue. They need results to justify their effort. But if you can continue without that validation, if you can stay consistent even when the outcome is unclear, you gain an advantage that is difficult to compete with. Because while others are stopping and starting, you are continuing. While they are questioning the process, you are deepening it. And over time, that difference becomes impossible to ignore. There is a concept that explains this shift. Progress is not linear. It does not move in a straight, predictable line. It accumulates slowly, almost invisibly, and then at a certain point, it accelerates. What once felt stagnant suddenly feels dynamic. What once felt like effort suddenly produces results. But that acceleration only happens for those who stay consistent long enough to reach it. If you quit too early, you never experience the return on your effort. You remain stuck in the phase where growth is happening, but not yet visible. And that creates the illusion that consistency doesn't work, when in reality, it was working the entire time. This is why patience is not passive, it is active. It requires discipline, focus, and the ability to continue without immediate reward. And there is something else to consider. When your transformation is built on consistency, it becomes stable. It is not dependent on external conditions. It does not collapse under pressure. Because it was developed slowly, it is deeply rooted. It becomes part of who you are, not just something you achieve temporarily. That is the difference between change and transformation. Change can happen quickly, but it is often fragile. Transformation takes time, but it is lasting. And consistency is the bridge between where you are and who you are becoming. So when you feel like nothing is happening, understand what that moment actually represents. It is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that the process is working at a level you cannot yet see. Stay with it. Continue to make the small improvements. Continue to follow through on your commitments. Continue to trust the process even when the results are delayed. Because one day, without warning, the invisible becomes visible. The habits you built start to show. The discipline you developed becomes evident. The person you have been quietly becoming finally appears in your results. And to everyone else, it will look sudden. It will look effortless. It will look like it happened overnight. But you will know the truth. It was never overnight. It was built in silence, in consistency, in moments when no one was watching and nothing seemed to be changing. And that is the moment where everything makes sense. So do not measure your progress only by what you can see today. Measure it by your willingness to continue. Because the real transformation is not in the results you achieve. It is in the person you become while achieving them. And if you can stay consistent long enough, the results will have no choice but to follow.